Hey, good morning and late. I just barely made it. Sorry. Actually, nobody's waiting anyway. So, just real crazy times up at the church. It's getting cleaned and my office is torn apart and everything's a mess. So, I just made it back here to get this set up in time. So, I was showing you a picture of a book of a woman holding a sheep. I don't think you could really tell what it was, but on the thumbnail, good morning, Linda. The thumbnail, this is a book that we have, Psalm 23. It's a kid's book. It's a great story, great kid's book. Good morning, Phyllis. Hi, Stella. Yeah. Cleaning's a good thing, but it is a mess up there. Good morning, Rox. Hi, Bonnie. So mess up there and it makes a mess everywhere. Anyway, we started talking yesterday about our souls and taking care of our souls. And I think that struck me. I've just become, hi, Kathy. Saw my mom this morning. Where was she? Were you over at Waldheim? Anyway, good morning, Mom. Not sure whose mom you saw, Kathy. I'm guessing mine. So I've just become increasingly aware of the fact that a lot of people really are not doing well right now for a lot of reasons, all understandable reasons. But I think one of the things, hi, Patrice, one of the things that struck me is that, and this is not like a criticism or judgment, but I don't think that we know how to take care of our souls. And I think a lot of us are finding that out right now. A lot of the stuff going on just has us weary, angry, we're kind of wondering what's next. And back in the fall of 2018, we did a series on our souls at church in October and November. For me personally, it was one of the most helpful series that I ever remember doing. Just in the process of putting that series together, that's the only series that I've ever preached that I sometimes get out the sermons and read through them. And I've been doing that again recently, just this past week. I got the whole stack of sermons right here, all these old manuscripts on our souls. It's kind of hard to believe, but even as a pastor, I don't think that we do a good job talking about our souls. We think about them in very shallow, superficial, actually incorrect ways. We think that our soul is that invisible part of us that is going to go to heaven when we die. And there's so much about that that's false. We think that our souls are the part of us that God is interested in. And our souls really are just so essential to who we are as human beings, especially to who we are as followers of Jesus. And I think the weariness that so many people are feeling right now, the fact that a lot of people really just want to kind of just give up and go hibernate. And I understand that, but I think a lot of that is a symptom of soul weariness. We don't know how to handle the turmoil and the chaos, the division, all the ugly stuff that's going on around us. So for me personally, I went back and I reread those messages on our souls and just tried to relearn what was so important to me at that time. And one of the things that I've learned or was reminded of is that our souls are needy. They're made by God to be needy. You know, there's all those Psalms that talk about, and really not just the Psalms, but there's so much in Scripture that talks about the neediness of our souls. And our souls are needy because God made us to want him, to need him. But we all know that we fill that neediness with all kinds of other things that just never satisfy. One of my favorite images from the book of Jeremiah is in chapter 2, where God is lamenting and informing Jeremiah about what the Israelites have done wrong. God is talking about the fact that the Israelites have pursued idols, and he says, God is saying that the Israelites have given up living water, meaning him, and they have put their hope in cracked cisterns. And it's such a good picture, especially in the ancient world, because cisterns were in that part of the world where rain came really. I mean, it can rain at all times of the year in Israel, but really there's a rainy season. There's about 3 months of the year, springish, when it rains a lot. And cisterns are everywhere, all over the Middle East. And cisterns were these big underground rooms. Don't think a tiny thing. Think a very large room, size of a house even. And they would divert all the rainwater, all the water into these cisterns, and then they would have a supply of water all year. But Israel's also an unstable country. There's lots of minor earthquakes all the time. And so it's very common for a cistern to crack. And of course, when a cistern cracks, the water leaks out. And so God is talking to Jeremiah and saying that the people have substituted him, living water, and they put their hope in cracked cisterns. And cracked cisterns don't hold water. And I think this is so common for us as human beings, that we put our hope in things that really, they're not bad things in any way. They're just not meant to be things on which we can build our lives. And there's always that temptation for us. There's always that temptation for us to build our lives in things that just don't hold water. That they aren't things that are going to sustain us. That's what we're finding out right now, that we've built our lives on things that are not going to sustain us. So we're weary. We're lonely. We're torn apart. We just want to quit. So I keep coming back to the fact that our souls have to be grounded and they have to be focused on God ultimately. And there really is no other substitute for that. How we do that is not in some ways it's very easy, but in some ways it's really difficult. One thing that I've been trying to learn to do, and this is something that I think would be good for all of us. Many of you are probably better at this than I am. But I'm really working on just constantly turning my thoughts to God all day long. Donna, I had gone to the office pretty early this morning to try to get some stuff done before the cleaning team came in, because I knew I was going to have to vacate my office and bring it back home. And so I walked back in right when Donna was leaving, and she said, "I haven't heard you sing in the shower for a couple mornings." And I haven't been. And that's, I joke about the fact, you've heard me talk, some of you have heard me talk about this, that singing in the shower is one of my, I call it my discipline of joy, singing or whistling in the shower. It's just a little silly, stupid discipline that I have, that when I get in the shower, it's my time to say, all right, it's time to start today joyfully. I just find it impossible to be depressed or miserable when I'm singing or whistling. So it's just this minor discipline. It's one way that I try to start each day with turning my thoughts to God. I haven't been doing that the last couple of days for a lot of reasons. They're not good reasons. But that's the kind of thing that pulls me in either good directions or wrong directions. So for me, just starting my day every morning with a deliberate attempt to turn my thoughts towards God, and then going through the day. I know we all do this. We all kind of have this constant stream of thoughts in our heads. We're kind of always talking to ourselves. Whenever I become conscious of the fact that I'm talking to myself, I on purpose try to shift that to talking to God. I have to do that constantly all day long. I'm most aware of it when my thoughts are negative. That can happen in any kind of circumstance. It can happen when I'm frustrated or interrupted, either with a person or with a long line, anything that kind of disrupts me. And then I find myself just, mentally cursing and doing all kinds of negative thoughts. And the moment I catch myself doing that, those negative thoughts, I deliberately shift the conversation to having a conversation with God. Anybody, all of us can do this. Another way that I catch myself having that internal dialogue is when I'm aware of the fact that I've done something wrong or stupid or foolish. And probably like all of us, well, maybe not, but I think like many of us, I will say to myself, oh, you idiot. So whenever I find myself talking to myself in that way, hi, Michelle. Hi, Pat. I deliberately shift it again and I start having a conversation. And I usually start out with that conversation with God, usually goes, oh, I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry, Father. Just a quick, I'm sorry, just that recognition of that I am calling someone an idiot that was created by God. And then I will shift this conversation and I'll say, God, I'm just so frustrated, whatever it is. So all day long, I am trying to shift my thoughts to having a conversation with God and being aware of the presence of God in my life, rather than, as is typical, expressing the frustration of life. And it always changes. It always changes the way I'm thinking, the way I'm acting. It always changes the internal dialogue that I'm having whenever I'm aware of the presence of God. So all of us can do this. All of us can just constantly go through our days, shifting the internal dialogue from ourselves to just the awareness that God is with us. This is something everybody can do. It's a habit we can learn. The other thing that we can do, and I had wanted to prepare this, but wasn't able to this morning, but to go through our days, I think I mentioned this. Gosh, I forget. I wanted to look at some of the morning, but I think I mentioned this many, many years ago when I was at Twin Pines camp. I memorized Psalm chapter 1. Never forgotten that. And in my mind, yes, I know I talked about this with you guys. In my mind, I often go back and I'm repeating Psalm chapter 1. I sometimes do the same thing with Psalm 23. And I kind of wanted to go through Psalm 23 with you guys this morning and just think about just a couple thoughts. And I'm going to do this quickly because I don't want to take more time than I should. But you guys know the Psalm. What's interesting about Psalm 23 is, that a lot of Hebrew poetry is I can't go into all the details, but it's arranged chiastically, which is just a balance. The first and last, there's a balance, and you have to understand it doesn't help us when we can't read Hebrew because it's really Hebrew words that they're balancing, and it's hard to reproduce in English. But when you organize a psalm chiastically, the center verse is always kind of the key verse. It's what the psalmist is thinking about. So in Psalm 23, it's interesting what the center verse is. So let me just kind of go through this and help you to read the psalm the way I think about it when I'm reminding myself of this. So it starts out that the Lord is my shepherd. I have everything that I want. Everything that I need, or in the old way that I memorized, I shall not want. What would that look like for you if you were aware of the fact that God was your shepherd, that he was leading you your whole life long, and that because of that, You have everything you need. Do you ever have any of those moments? I don't know what it would look like for you when you might be sitting somewhere relaxing. Good morning, Ann. You're sitting somewhere, maybe at the end of a long day, and you just have this sense of, I would say, quiet and perfect rest and being at ease. And that's what the psalmist is explaining there. He's saying, when God is my shepherd, I just have everything I need. What would that look like for you, that awareness? Then the next couple of verses, he says, he lets me rest in green meadows. How would that impact your life to be aware of the fact that God is always wanting to guide you to rest for your soul? It says, he leads me beside peaceful streams or still waters or quiet waters. One thing, again, I hate to go to the hunting thing. I don't like killing stuff. And actually, I have more fun observing animals. But one of the things I've learned about deer, and I think this is true, I've read this is true of sheep as well, where I go hunting, where I walk in the woods, there's a lot of streams running off the mountains. At the bottom of the mountain, there's a pond. And I've noticed that even though there's a lot of water running off the mountain, the deer tend to cross those streams. There's all kinds of trail crossing streams, but they don't drink from them. They go down to the pond to drink. And I've heard that sheep are the same, that they don't drink from rushing water. They drink from still water. And so the psalmist is saying that God takes me to a place where the waters are still, and there I can be refreshed. And what would that be like for you if God was taking you to a place where you could be refreshed and the waters were still? And then it says, he restores my soul. It's God who gives our soul strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. And that's the picture of a shepherd who is just keeping the sheep out of trouble. And when we follow God, when we follow God's paths, his paths really do keep us out of certain kinds of trouble, the trouble we make for ourselves, the kind of trouble that we make in our lives when we go down the wrong paths. So with God as a shepherd, he keeps us on the right path. Now, all that to say, this is the center verse, these next couple of verses. This is why what the psalmist was thinking. This is so important for us. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the guy who wrote this psalm, a Psalm of David, it says, was aware of the fact that he was going to walk through some really dark valleys of death. And we are. Those are the kind of things we're walking through right now, really dark valleys. But he said, even when I walk through these valleys, I will not be afraid, for you walk close beside me. What would it be like for you and I to be aware of the fact that even going through the most difficult and darkest of circumstances, there's no reason to be fearful because God is walking right beside us. Your rod and your staff comfort me, David said. The fact that God has his strength with him, the shepherd has his rod and his staff, preventing any harm coming from any external circumstances to David. Now, God doesn't, obviously, as you know, God doesn't put a bubble around us and keep harm from impacting our lives. But David is saying, God, even in these dark valleys, you're with me. So I find myself at times just going through Psalm 23, one verse at a time, just that same way, just this awareness of who God is and what he's doing for me and these promises from God. And that's one way that I work on having a healthy soul, a strong soul. And all of us, I guess this is the invitation that God gives to all of us, that that our souls can be strong and they can be resilient. So even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, even when we walk through the darkest valleys, we don't need to be afraid because God is with us. So I think if I get a chance, I'm going to think more about our souls over the next coming days and think about what we do to build strong souls. But I really believe to my core that it starts with this awareness that our souls are made to need God. And we can go through every moment of the day aware of his presence. So I want to pray that that would be true for us today, and pray that all of us will be working on going through days aware of God's presence in our life. So let me pray. God, I want to thank you. I thank you, God, for your goodness. I thank you for the fact that even when we go through the darkest of valleys, the most difficult of times, that even then we can be assured that you're with us, that your presence is always here. We're never abandoned by you. There's never a moment that you're distracted. There's never a moment that you choose to leave and be somewhere else, but that you just absolutely delight in being with us. God, I pray that we would be learning to be delighted in your presence the same way you're delighted in ours. Pray, God, that you'll help us as we go through just this day. Pray, God, that you'll help us to be aware of your presence, to be thinking your thoughts. I pray, God, that every time that we become aware of the fact that our thoughts are somewhere else, I pray that you would remind us through the presence of your Spirit that we can turn our thoughts to you, that we can talk to you rather than talking to ourselves. Pray, God, that that would change the way we see all of the cares and worries and anxieties that we're facing. I pray, God, that that would change the way we see other people. I pray, God, that that would also change the way we see ourselves. So, God, thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for who you are. Thank you that you are enough. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Alrighty, everybody. Hope you have a good day. Love you all, and see you tomorrow.